A good show should make you feel what the characters are feeling. If someone has been betrayed, then you should also feel betrayed. If they are celebrating a victory, you should celebrate with them. And if they're mourning the death of a friend, so should you.
Let's game, Mr. Game, Mr. Game, what's her name? I'm a Kamen Rider!
Kamen Rider has got to have some of the saddest moments in television. No matter what season you watch, there's always going to be a few moments in there that make you want to curl up into a ball and cry like a little baby. The show has made me cry more than any series I've ever watched. But that could be because I am a big baby. So, after inspiration from the latest episodes of Greced, I thought I might as well show you guys my personal top 10 saddest moments from Kamen Rider. Warning, spoilers abound, because most of these are deaths. I hate Faiz. I really do. My biggest problem with Faiz was that I just couldn't stand most of the characters in that show. Except for two of them, Keitaro and Yuka. Keitaro was just such a lovable guy, and Yuka? You can't hate Yuka. She had gone through so much crap. Her parents liked her sister more than her sister was a complete jerk to her, and she died. But luckily she was reborn and life seemed to be going pretty good for her. Later in the series she finds out her pen pal was Keitaro the whole time, and they finally get to go on the date they always wanted to. But before she can meet up with him, her, Takumi, and this guy are lured into a trap and are attacked by the police. Yuka makes it out, but she is cornered by one of the Lucky Clover, and because of her injuries from the attack and her being tortured episodes earlier, she can't transform and is killed. With her last moments, she emails Keitaro that she's sorry she couldn't make it to their date. It's just so sad to see a character so tortured and so tragic get killed off when she was finally happy. Honestly, it'd be higher up on this list if I didn't hate the show so much! Hopping off the hate train, let's talk about something other people hate, but I don't. Kiva. Kiva does the whole love story in Kamen Rider correctly. Unlike Faiz, Wataru and Mio's relationship in Kiva is so cute. So of course, it has to end in tragedy. See, Mio is the successor of the Fangire Queen, and is destined to end up with the Fangire King, Taiga, who is Wataru's brother. So yeah, that sucks. But someone writing Kiva was like, that's not sad enough. So she dies, by Wataru's hands. Feet? Anyway, she just didn't want the two brothers to fight, so she jumped in the way of Wataru's rider kick on Taiga. Wataru holds her dying body in his arms. The same jerk from the writing team said once again, not sad enough! And they show a scene of what it would be like if the two of them had gotten married. God, I'm only on number 8 and I'm already depressed. What's worse than killing off a side character? How about a main character? How about half the main rider? How would you feel if Google died? Philip's death wasn't instant. There was an entire episode leading up to it. If Philip transformed one more time, he would disappear for good, so Shotaro avoided transforming at all costs. But the Utopia Dopant was too strong, and they were forced to transform and beat him with ease. But then it was time to say goodbye. Philip goes to undo the transformation, but Shotaro stops him and says, let me do it. With tears in his eyes, he undoes the transformation and watches his best friend fade away. He goes back to his agency and finds Philip has left behind a note and a driver so he can continue fighting without him. And at that point, the tears start flowing. Not only for Shotaro, but for us as well. Philip was a character you knew and loved since episode 1. He was the lovable, naive one compared to Shotaro's adorable idiocy. You grew to love this character for 48 episodes, and since he had amnesia, you learned about him at the same time he learned about himself. Honestly, this might have been number 1, but Philip being revived the next episode really ruins it for me. Let me say this to start. This movie blows. The parts about Kamen Rider are super boring, and I honestly could not tell you the plot of it, except the subplot between the two sick people, Haruhiko and Miyoko. They have a kind of The Fault in Our Stars relationship. Miyoko visits Haruhiko all the time in the hospital, and he thinks she is just a worker. Sadly for him, that's not the case. She's also a patient there and is terminal like him. They both make a promise to stay alive until next year when the flowers they planted together bloom. Lucky for them, Shocker takes them in and cures their disease in exchange that they work for them. Turns out they had been the Snake and Cobra Shocker agents the writers have been fighting throughout the entire movie. With a final rider kick to each of them, they are killed, but not before Haruhiko can see the flowers they planted together. He crawls over to her lifeless body and puts a flower in Miyoko's ear, thanking her for everything. You may hate me for putting this moment above Philip's death, but to me, this scene hits hard, so I don't care. I got a little help for this video, so here's Marcosatsu to talk about his personal, saddest moment in Kamen Rider.
My best friend, Tsurugi Kamishiro, is a man that stands on the man that stands on top of everything. Tsurugi is more arrogant than Tendo, but Tsurugi has a charm to him. There was an episode where he wanted to blend in with normal people, so he dressed up as a schoolboy and shenanigans ensued. Come on, that's hilarious. However, not everything is fun and games with Tsurugi as we find out that it's not the real Tsurugi, but rather a worm that was copying him. In truth, the real Tsurugi and his sister died a long time ago. Tsurugi was someone that just wanted to fight the worms and continue to be the rich snob that he is, but the inevitable comes and Tendo had to keep a promise he made to Tsurugi. Kill all the worms, even Tsurugi. Tsurugi doesn't want to fight, but it's in his nature as a worm. Tendo finishes him off. With his last breath, Tsurugi asks, "Is it okay for me to dream?"
There isn't many things I would consider worse than death. One of those things would be losing your humanity. Kenzaki is a very selfless man and doesn't care what happens to him if he can help someone else. When they seal the Giraffe undead, Hajime is the only undead left. A Joker undead. And when Joker is the only undead left, the world starts to end. The world starts to get swarmed by dark roaches and the riders try to take out as many as they can, but it's futile. Nothing can stop it. Except one thing. Ever since Kenzaki got king form, people have been telling him that he needs to stop using it or else he's going to turn into an undead. Once the dark roaches start appearing, Kenzaki goes immediately to king form every time, no matter how small the fight is. He runs into Hajime and they have one final fight, one epic enough to finish his transformation into an undead, thus meaning Hajime is no longer the only undead left in the world. Kenzaki tells Hajime that it's their nature to fight, so he must go far away from him so their paths never cross again, thus leaving his entire life behind to save the entire world. Let's talk about Drive for a second. I think most people can agree with me that the final fight between Drive and Sigma is nothing compared to the fight between Mach and Chase versus Gold Drive. Mach is injured from the excessive use of burst dead heat and is struggling in the battle. Chase gets blasted away and his driver is broken. He sees Banno going for the killing blow on Go, and runs up to him, turning into a machine chaser, something he hasn't done in a long time, and takes the blow for him. He's then knocked out of his transformation, and with his last few words, hands Go his signal bike and his driver's license, and uses the explosion from his death to damage Gold Drive in any way he can. Now Chase's death is sad, don't get me wrong, but it's the people's reaction to it that really gets ya. When Kiriko finds out, she immediately breaks into tears. Shinosuke and Heart fight back the tears because if they don't, it will distract them from their current objective. Even Medic apologizes for the awful things she did to him. But Go's reaction is the one that rips at your heart and cries directly on it. Throughout the entire series, Go has hated Chase no matter what, just because he was a Roy mute. But when Chase sacrifices himself to save Go, he realizes he was only being stubborn and he thought of Chase as a buddy since he joined them. He screams at Banno for killing his best friends and transformed into Chaser Mach, leading into my personal favorite Kamen Rider fight scene. Well, check out the Fandub in the description below. I think this is the pick I'm going to get the most hate for. Not because it's not sad or because it's too high up, but because there are a lot of sad moments from Gaim to pick, and I picked this one. Because, in my opinion, it is the most heartbreaking. Take a look at this scene from the first two episodes. After beating his first Invis, Kouta is ecstatic that he can transform and actually help change the world. Just look at the smile on that face. He has no idea what's gonna happen. Now, look at this face. This is the face of him realizing that the first monster he killed was his best friend that he's been looking for since he got that driver. Kind of like Chase's death, it's not really the death that really gets to you, but it's how people react to it. Specifically Kouta. His quest the entire show has been find Yuuya, and the entire time he's been dead, because he killed him. He falls to his knees and for the next half an episode he's an empty husk who doesn't care anymore. He isn't able to do anything until Sagara appears and tells him, "Protecting requires sacrifice? Screw that. Destroy that rule and change the world in the process," leading into the debut of my personal favorite Kamen Rider form. So maybe there's some bias there, but you cannot tell me this scene didn't hurt to watch. Now it's one thing to be sad when a hero dies. That's a given. But when an entire villain faction is killed, you're supposed to be happy. That's not the case for O's. See, in O's, all of the deaths of the main villains hit very hard. Whether they were good, bad, or even the big bad. The Greed just wanted to exist normally, but when they were created, their creators took one of their cores away from them, meaning they could never be truly compete. always longing to be so. Mizuru just wanted to know what it was like to feel the love between a mother and child. She kidnaps a group of mothers and their children to attempt to feel what their love is like, and she is killed by Oz. Kamel just wanted to be with Mizuru, and when she dies, he refuses to give one of her cores to Dr. Maki. Dr. Maki attacks him and cracks 2 of his cores. He's truly beaten by the Birthriders, and in his last moments he gives a piece of candy to Mizuru's core and imagines her finally accepting it. Then, there's Uva. All he wanted to do was live. Once he got all of his core medals back, he just didn't want to die, but was forced to become the medal container by Maki. His begging screams of Maki to stop haunt me to this day. Then, there's Maki himself. He's obsessed with death, and to him, nothing is beautiful until after they die. His death is probably the least sad of them all because he's a little bit of a jerk. But when you see what he went through as a child, you feel for him a little bit. Finally, we get to Ankh, who has the saddest death of them all. He just wanted to be complete, to know what it was like to be truly alive. In his final moments, he gives his core medals to Eiji and lets him transform into the Tajidor combo one more time. Ankh's voice being used instead of the O's drivers to add to the sad yet epic moment. Him and Eiji fight together to finish off Maki in the metal container. All the core medals are sucked away and Eiji is falling to earth. As he's falling, he sees Ankh, and Ankh tells him that his wish to be truly alive was granted by Eiji because they thought of him as a friend, not as a greed. Oh, and if you're wondering why I didn't talk about Kazari, it's because Kazari's a prick and deserved to die. Now, before I get to number 1, let's get into some honorable mentions. I'm not going to say anything about them because this video is long enough already, but they're all still pretty freaking sad. And here to talk about one of his saddest moments is Special Form 12 about Kamen Rider Emperor.
One of the saddest moments in Kamen Rider for me is not necessarily as sad as it is painful to watch. The final moments leading up to Kamen Rider Emperor's death in Ryuki reflect how cruel the Rider War truly is. Mitsuru had finally gotten everything he had ever wanted out of life, as well as his wish for the Rider War. But everything goes to shame when he is betrayed by Tojo, who he thought he had befriended, beaten up by his Advent Beast, and had his Advent deck destroyed by Oja, trapping him in the Mirror World. And if that wasn't cruel enough, we are shown Mitsuru's final moments as he desperately grabs a shattered piece of mirror in order to get a last glimpse of a girl he was supposed to meet on the same bridge that day. His fate ends with them both in the same place beside each other, but unable to see where the other one truly is. Emperor's death reflects a sense of desperation and ambition towards Mitsuru, who all he ever wanted from the Rider War was to be happy.
When you were a kid, were you ever sent to bed without dinner? It was pretty sad, wasn't it? Well, that's Takeru's entire life. Sure, he could potentially live forever, walk through walls, disappear and fly, while also being much more unique than the other guys, but nothing like that compares to not being able to have dinner. And that is my saddest moment in all of Kamen Rider. But that's just common knowledge. Hold on, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Kamen Rider Fourze is my favorite season, so there's a lot of bias here. But in my opinion, every sad moment in these 2 episodes is 100 times more sad than any moment on this list. I'm going to go in order for the most part, but the saddest moment I'm saving for the end. First, we find out that Kengo isn't human. He's a core child left by people called presenters to judge humanity, meaning he has to leave Earth to be with the presenters, leaving his friends behind and taking the Fourze driver with him. Second, Yuki and Gentaro confront him about how distant he's been since finding this information out. Kengo breaks into tears, something he's never done before, and confesses that he hates the idea of leaving and was hoping by acting cold he could push them away and make it easier on all of them. With some great acting, Yuki and Gentaro break into tears and tell Kengo that they hate to see him go, but they're glad they got to be friends with someone so amazing, and promise to find a way to see him again, even if it takes the rest of their lives. Third, during the previous moment, Tatsugami and Gamo, the Leo and Sagittarius Zodiarts, were trashing the Rabbit Hutch, their base of commands, and it is always sad to see a command center destroyed. Gentaro arrives and starts to fight them, and they force him out a window, which starts sucking the air out of the place, and everyone retreats. Kengo hands Yuki a letter and thanks her for everything as he helps her escape. Fourth, Kengo freaking dies. Gamo Kaiju kicks him and destroys his core, thus killing him. This is not only a main character, but Gentaro's best friend. When I first saw this, I couldn't stop the tears no matter how hard I tried. 5th, Meteor's my favorite rider, so let me have this one. Ryusei has his final bout with Tatsugami and gives an amazing speech about how he's realized how important life is since he became friends with Gentaro, telling him that he can't be beaten by someone who will so readily throw his life away. It's an epic but sad moment to see how far he's come since he was introduced. 6. Gamo brings Gentaro back to Amahai, and the other Rider Club members are there, and they hold a graduation ceremony for the school no longer being his experiment. Gentaro fights him untransformed while the others thank Gamo for building the school where they not only found their best friends they'll ever have, but where they truly found themselves, showing how each individual character has grown since the show started. Gentaro transforms one final time with the others in the back chanting 3, 2, 1 along with him, as well as his signature Uchu Kita! Then, Gentaro uses his original finisher, the Rider Rocket Drill Kick, to finish Gamo off once and for all. But then, Gentaro offers a chairman to be his friend, because that's just who Gentaro is. And the entire time they are playing Saite, the saddest freaking song in the entire universe! 7. Gamo realizes how wrong he was for doing all of this and he hobbles away, barely breathing because his body can't handle the power he has. But, in his final moments, he uses the Aquarius Zodiark switch to heal the core switch and bring Kengo back to life. As a human, somehow. It doesn't really make sense, but it's still pretty sad watching Gamo die. But stay with me here, because we're about to get to the saddest moment of all. The freaking letter scene! I skipped it because this was what I wanted to talk about the most. After the rabbit hatch blows up for good, Yuki reads a letter that Kengo gave to her. It says, "Either I made it to the presenters or Gamo has killed me. Either way, I couldn't leave without saying a few final words." He tells Yuki that he couldn't have made the Fourze system without her and thanks her for helping him all these years. He tells Miyu that she has a lot to be proud of and to believe in herself. He tells Daimonji that he's the only one who can treat Miyu right. He tells Jake that the two of them are very similar in the fact that they lie to themselves to make themselves feel better, but he doesn't need to do that anymore. He tells Tomoko how her instincts saved their butts more than once and he's glad she joined the club and opened up to them. He tells Ryusei that he's sorry he didn't get to talk to him more, but he's sure the Rider Club is safe with him around. Then finally, he tells Gentaro that he's his best friend, and thanks him for everything he's ever done for him. The entire time, a transparent Kengo is shown saying these words to them. Then he tells them not to hate Gamo for killing him, because they just aren't hateful people, and it would kill Kengo to see them become that. I'm not sure if it's just good acting, the way it's shot, the way it's written, the fact I'm a sympathetic crier, or all of the above, but I cannot watch this scene without crying. While writing this video, I cried 3 times on this one alone. Their reactions are just so heartbreaking to watch. The one that gets me the most is Ryusei. This is such great acting on Ryo Yoshizawa's part. Already he's fighting back tears when it gets to him, but when Kengo says, "They're in safe hands with you," he breaks down into tears and clenches his fists in anger. He says that he could protect the rest of them, but he couldn't protect Kengo. Gentaro didn't have his belt at the time of Kengo's death, but Ryusei did. He could have done something, but he wasn't fast enough, and it rips his tough exterior to shreds. For all those reasons, that is why Kamen Rider Fourze's final 2 episodes are my personal saddest moments in Kamen Rider. But to me, that's just common sense.